us and welcome to today's webinar, Supporting Young Minds, Effective Empowerment Strategies. My name is Jackie Zimmerman, and I'm the Manager of Public Education Partnerships and E-Learning at Mental Health America's National Office, and I'll be helping to lead today's session. Just a few notes for you before we get started. This webinar is being recorded and will be emailed out to all registrants within 1 week. We currently do not offer CEUs, but if you would like to request a certificate of attendance, I have a form you can complete. I will put that form in the chat, and also it will come in your follow-up email. Just know that our CEUs or our certificates of attendance only come for live attendance. So thank you all for being here. We might have some time at the end of today's session for Q&A. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat. I'll be collecting those as we go. And then if we do have some time at the end, we'll be able to talk through some of them with our panelists. Just another reminder in case you missed it, as we started, your mics are off, your cameras are muted. They will stay that way throughout today's session. So any questions, comments, resources you'd like to share, those all can go in the chat. We also want to recognize that MHA has some Supporting Young Minds resources specifically about today's topic and about how to support youth in this transition time going back to school. I'll post the link to those resources in the chat and include them in your follow-up email. They can be found at mhanational.org/young-minds. Now to the fun stuff. I have three incredible speakers here today with me, Isabel, Abdullah, and Jonathan, who have so graciously offered their time to chat with us for this next hour about how adults can really work to empower youth, to uplift them, and create spaces where youth voices are not just heard, but they're really centered in the conversation. First, thank you all for being here, Jonathan, Isabel, Abdullah. I would love for each of you to share a little bit about yourself with our audience so that they get to know you better, know who they're speaking with. Just give us a little bit about you, what you're doing in this space, and anything else related to today's topic that you want to share. And whoever wants to kick us off can go first.
I'll be happy to go first. So, hey everybody, thank you so much for coming. My name is Abdullah Ilahi. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm a current sophomore in Washington University in St. Louis. And I've been doing mental health work for some time now. I was in the 2022 to 2023 Young Mental Health Leaders Council for Mental Health America. It was one of the best opportunities I've ever had. Also, I was doing a lot of mental health work in Memphis, specifically working with administrators and lawmakers trying to get resources for young people. And I also started a mental health club at my school.
Thanks, Abdullah.
I can hop in. Hi, everyone. I'm Isabel. I'm from Houston, Texas, but I'm currently a second-year student at the University of Virginia. I'm a psych major and I'm a double major. My second major is youth and social innovation, which here at Virginia essentially is just a major that focuses on youth empowerment and social structures that affect young people and also policy that affects young people. And then I'm a data science minor. I have also been in the mental health space for a while, since I was about like 15 in high school. I similarly helped create a mental health club in high school, and I was one of 12 Bezos scholars for like 2022. That was back in the day. And that was kind of based on my work in mental health. And since then, I've kind of been helping to merge like policy and academia in order to create more resources and support for young people and their mental wellness, and also encouraging young people's voices in leadership positions. I've been able to work with the Aspen Institute on their Aspen Ideas Festival. I've been able to work here at MHA on their Youth Policy Accelerator team, and also just like different organizations around Virginia and Texas in order to like empower young people.
That's amazing. My name is Jonathan Jean Charles. I'm from the University of Miami. I'm also from Miami, so stayed in here for school, stayed in here forever. Currently double majoring in global health studies and biochemistry. I'm on campus. I'm a peer educator. That stands for Counseling Outreach Peer Education. We do a lot of tabling on campus, and we do a lot of presentations as well. Most of my, I would say, high school involvements weren't necessarily mental health related, but they were related to education. I'm a strong believer in the power of education just to mobilize communities and to affect social change. So I did tutor a lot of kids. I did serve as an academic mentor as well. And I think all those things led me here today. So this should be fun.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jonathan, Isabel, and Abdullah. You all are so accomplished and have great perspective on today's topic. So I'm going to jump right into it. I want to start with kind of just a forming question for us all here, as we have folks joining that are in various roles. They might be working with youth. They might be in spaces in the mental health field and community-based centers, in schools, in counseling settings, so many different spaces where we have the opportunity to really uplift youth. And so I'd love to hear from you on why you think it's so important to have youth leadership roles in discussions about their own mental health and well-being. And
I
whoever
just
wants to
want to
hop in
start off.
first. Yeah, go for it, Abdullah.
So I just want to start off by just saying the obvious, like youth are the ones who are being affected, and you need to have those who are affected speak up. So I think that's like one of the main reasons why it's important to have them, to have their voices heard and to also have their decisions respected as well.
I can piggyback off of that. Youth are like the experts in their own experience, and their lived experiences is one of the most important things they bring to the table, especially because their lived experiences are a reflection of how how different it looks like to be a youth today, especially due to like technology, social media. And so their individual and unique lived experiences kind of help them lead the discussions. Secondly, autonomy. That's something we all know in adolescence. Youth start to kind of want that sense of autonomy, like that exploring that sense of agency. And so having them in these discussions, it kind of helps foster that sense of agency and that sense of autonomy. And lastly, it kind of helps build important skills for young people to use as they like emerge into adulthood and emerge into like the workspace and like their careers. It helps to like foster leadership and like be able to like know how to facilitate different like important conversations, and just being in these discussions just kind of helps them build those foundational skills that would be important as they like emerge into adulthood and become like the new leaders.
Would even say like with regards to sustainability, I mean, they're going to be here for a lot more longer time than adults will be. And I mean, especially I give you a good example. One will be climate change. I hear a lot of older folks who say, we need to get the youth more mobilized in this because they're going to have to deal with the older version of the earth than we would have to. So I think that, that's a good investment too, just preparing people who are going to be a part of major discussions for like society and the world when they're in like their 40s and 60s. So that's why I would think that's probably why one of the big things we should do is invest in our young leaders. But also too, I mean, the experiences, especially for the youth of today, we grew up on social media. We can leverage that to mobilize other people to share more information. I think that we're doing a pretty good job with that.
Yeah, you absolutely are. And those are some great points. I know even Jonathan, you were there, but recently at our conference last weekend, we had our youth discussion panel. And one of the things was, finding out how to collaborate between generations. And it is so important because our older generations have a wealth of knowledge and experiences that they have experienced in different but similar ways. And so that collaborative nature is really important. But you all are experiencing things that have never happened before, or that might be new, or are happening in different ways. And so being sure to include you on the conversations affecting you, like you said, Abdullah, if we're the ones that this is affecting, we need to have a say in it. It's so important. And one of the things I love that you brought up, Isabel, too, was about how important it is to build up those skill sets in young people that these positions really provide them with. And I'd love to talk about, how do we make sure when we're bringing youth into these conversations, into planning, into programming, into all sorts of different spaces, that they're not just included or one perspective is included. But how do we make sure that youth are leading these conversations and programs designed to serve them, and that we're including multiple voices?
I can jump in. I think the most important thing, and this is something I bring up all the time, is like not tokenizing young people. So I know MHA does a really good job at this, but ensuring that you're hearing from different young people. So when we're looking at like youth advocacy, and I can say like I've been a part of this, it's very common to see like the same young people like be on this panel and this advisory board, and it's like just the same like select few young people. And although that's really important to still include more experienced young advocates, it's important that we're also like allowing space and allowing room for like young voices that have not been heard yet and that they haven't been offered these opportunities yet. And touching back on like more experienced young people, it's really important that when we do invite young people to these like to the table and to these conversations, that after we have gotten insight from them, like we're not just tossing them out, like we're still keeping them engaged, we're still connecting them. I've been in like so many programs where, like after my 1 year term is over, like I don't talk to those people anymore. Like I don't interact with that organization anymore. And so I can't even really see like the impact of like my work or like my 1 year in that space. So it's just really important that we're still connecting to those like more experienced young people. And one last thing, it's also really important that we are being very mindful of like diversity when we're selecting young people, and obviously like diversity in terms of demographic, but also diversity in terms of like making sure like it's not the same like young people who go to like the top schools. Like we're getting young people from like different backgrounds. We're also getting young people from like rural areas. Like we're just getting more diverse space, like more diverse young people who like have more unique experiences that are able to like contribute to these discussions.
I would jump in a little bit. I mean, someone in the chat asked, how can you speak up? And I just wanted to elaborate on something I told them. Said one, it really starts with finding those mentors who would really are willing to be your advocate. And I'll say two, start practicing speaking with your peers, start practice speaking with your loved ones, because if you can communicate effectively to them, that will give you the confidence to look out for other resources and to, become the advocate for the thing that you're passionate about, whether it's climate change, whether it's mental health, or whether it's increasing resources for those who don't have access to them.
I also just want to piggyback from Isabel's points about diversity, and that also having like diversity in religion as well will be extremely important because like as somebody who's born Muslim and who's like raised in a Muslim community, I learned about mental health at a really young age, and like just I feel like it's also the same with so many other religions and spiritualities as well. But also like to also add on to the question and just to like also add on to our answers as well. My message for adults who are in positions of power who wanna work with young people, I'd say like having more encouragement and being more relaxed as well. And also just like trying to understand because it is a gap, it is a generational gap. And this has come from somebody who had to work with some lawmakers. Some were extremely nice. Some just listened to what I said. It went through one of their ears, it just came out through the other. But just understanding, having perspective on that. And then number one, just giving the opportunity. I feel like that's a prerequisite for everything.
Absolutely. From all of you, I think the kind of through line is first opening the door so that youth can have that involvement, and then being really mindful and inclusive when you're thinking about who we're involving. It's not just one youth or two or three, but it's multiple, and make sure that there's that diversity in experience and in background, and also in that lived experience is such an important part of that when it comes to mental health. Having that lived experience to talk to your peers about, and help inform the adults that are in these positions too. Um, I know that those are kind of like the key components of what can make success in this area. But do you have any specific examples of spaces where you've really seen this successfully done?
I can jump in. I'll say one. I mean, well, obviously the Mental Health America Young Leaders Council, which is recent. That's a great example of a space where young leaders can come to advocate for issues they're passionate about. I would even say that at my school, within the Department of Housing and Residential Life, we have this thing called RLC, which is Residential Life Council. So it serves as a great opportunity for the residents, like the college students who live in those buildings, to really meet with their RAs, see the people in the departments, and pretty much voice their concerns. But it's also a great leadership development opportunity for those students to get more involved in the department and hopefully become resident assistants and first year fellows for the university. So I've seen that on my campus. It's worked well, and I think that is one framework that I think a lot of, institutions should try to emulate as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of course going to piggyback off what Jonathan just said. MHA is a great example of that. I know they're pretty big on just ensuring that, young people, especially young people who haven't had a chance to like be in these spaces, have that chance, and just like, what's the word, like sharing the goods. I don't really know, but just ensuring that we're not constantly picking the same young person. I mentioned this before, but I was part of the Bezos Scholars Program, and I mean, like, if you've never heard of them, please check them out. They're pretty good at ensuring that young people are staying connected in their network. So they have like a special app for like people who are part of their network. And the Bezos program has been around since I think the year I was born, which was '04. And so we still have people who are part of this app and part of this network, who were part of this program in 2004, which was 20 years ago. And of course, they're not young people anymore, but having that kind of what you mentioned with Jackie, with that intergenerational like collaboration, we now have those people, although they're not young people anymore, they're like in their 30s, 40s, they're able to like support the younger cohort and kind of like give them like access to different resources. So that's just a great way to just continue that like intergenerational support over the years.
One group of like one organization that I was in for some time in Memphis, Tennessee was called Bridge Builders, and I feel like it was an organization that really valued youth voices. And also like when I was in other organizations, I was kind of used to just being told what to do. But in this organization, it was like a breath of fresh air. And that like they said, like, what do you think? What should we do? Like, what are your opinions or point of view on this? So that was that was one of the best experiences I've ever had, especially like with more like there was another organization called Bridge Builders Change, and like in the team as well, like we did have adult advisors, but basically how we just worked as teammates. So
Absolutely. That's a great example, Abdullah. And I think a key component to all of this and how youth can help support each other and help inform these programs and help inform adults is their expertise and guidance that can be used. And a lot of times we see this in the form of peer support, informal and formal peer support. So, we have our certified peer specialists that train to support each other, but there's also lots of informal ways to support each other. And in a lot of these programming, you get the opportunity to provide that support. I would just love to hear from you on kind of the role that you see peer support playing in addressing youth mental health and how adults might be able to help effectively facilitate peer support programs.
I can hop in. So of course, when it comes to peer support, I think the most important thing it does for young people is it kind of helps with destigmatizing mental health. I can speak on my own experience. It's much different when I'm talking to another young person about what I'm going through versus when I'm talking to someone who's 30 years older than me. A lot of times with young people and like just like going through their mental health journey can feel really isolating because although you have adults and you have parents and you have older mentors who are there to support you, it kind of feels like you don't understand what it feels like to be like a young person now. So although they can give you advice, it hits different when you're hearing it from someone your age, because I feel like it's a little bit more like relatable. It's a little bit more applicable. And it's just like so much more, I don't know, inspiring to just hear someone who's like around your age know that like they've been through something and like understand how they like got like what's the word, how they like got over that like mental health struggle. It's, I don't know, it's just like much more inspiring. And then for like young people who are peer health like specialists, it kind of helps them again with like building skills for the future, etc. And also it helps them build like really good like connection with other people in their generation. And then lastly, I feel like the most important thing adults can do to support peer health or peer support is one, validating peer support. I feel like many times adults kind of don't, although peer support is much different than, going to like a licensed like psychologist, it's two different things. Still like validating the importance of peer health and like peer support, and giving young people opportunities to like training young people in a way that they can be effective like peer health specialists to their peers.
I completely agree, and I also just want to piggyback off of the point with the adults helping in as well, and that like the adults who are in the positions of powers, like people in schools or people on the school board, like having like they have the ability, they have the funds, they have the opportunities and the resources to give young people training, and to also and to just like facilitate those spaces too, of having young people speaking with other young people, facilitating those opportunities and creating a system. But I 100% agree, and I think it's so important that like there's a gap, and there is sometimes a gap in knowledge and experience between young people and adults, and that we are like in an age of technology, for example. Like it's a little bit more like if you were trying to explain it to some other people who are not familiar with it, it's a little bit more difficult, especially when it comes to like the problems with it. So like talking about your experiences with somebody who's also been through them and somebody who has had solutions to like come out of them, I think it's extremely important.
I would say like probably the most important thing is just to create those safe spaces for students to be vulnerable. I know that at my school, we have a COPE advisor, and although she oversees like all the peer education we do, she does give us an opportunity to be to ourselves and to do our work. She's not always, over us, so domineering all the time. I would say even too, I would say building that empathy too, because when I first started being a peer educator, I realized like that's the most important thing. Most of the times when people are being vulnerable with you, they don't necessarily want you to give them like the scientific method that they need to get over something. They just want you just to be there to listen, just to be human with them. So I would also say, trying to, teach the youth to have more empathy.
Absolutely. Teaching them how to foster those conversations and build trust in relationships. I know someone in the chat too had said peer support training for different ages, talking about being in middle school. There's some people who are working in high school or college levels, and it can look really different. But I think a powerful part of informal peer support can be mentoring, as all of you have talked about, of how can we make connections between youth and help build up some mentorship that's peer to peer. Because as Isabel said, it's easier to relate to someone who's going through the same things that you are around the same time, and you're just able to communicate in different ways and relate on different levels. So facilitating spaces where you can create those connections, and some ways that we can kind of help build up those skills beyond having that formal peer support certification is starting to train youth in things like motivational interviewing and building up skills of how to have conversations and ask questions, and then know when it's also important to be able to provide resources and equipped youth with knowledge on what's available for support. So if someone does share something with you and you're talking through things, how can we also make sure you're getting the formal support that you need in those ways? Thank you all so much for those great answers. I want to shift, as I know probably a lot of our audience here today are adults. So I'd love to hear from you on your thoughts about how adults can balance offering that guidance and support to youth while still giving the youth autonomy to lead and make decisions in spaces. It's a big one.
I'm thinking, I mean, that's very hard. I will say I'll say a lot of planning has to go into that. And even for, an advisor or mentor to, be able to lead a group of people, but also give them that opportunity to kind of carve their own style of leadership. I think it takes a lot of trust. So I would say at the beginning, definitely takes time to just have individualized mentorship with that person, with that peer, with that student. Make sure that they're mentally prepared to take on that role, and then give them time to actually grow into that leadership role to develop those skills that they need to be more successful.
I would also just say like coming from like a place like patience and understanding. This is for anybody who just first starts out in doing something like this. And one fact that all of us need to know is that mistakes are going to get made, like all the time. That is unavoidable. So just being patient with that and understanding, just telling them like it's okay if you make a mistake. Let's figure it out and let's work through it and let's learn how to not do it again in the future. It's something like that. Like making them comfortable with making mistakes. Because I can tell you, when I was first doing this work, I was extremely scared of making mistakes. But then when my adult advisors, when they just showed that patience, that and just being that really comfortable, it helped me so much and also helped me in my growth as well. So I would really emphasize that point.
Yeah, I love that point. I think it's really important for adult mentors or whatever role you're playing in young people's lives to kind of help them navigate those mistakes and also understand that young people are still people and we all, regardless of your age, we all make mistakes. So like just letting them know that that's okay. I think it's also really important for adults who are trying to support young people to understand that like that intergenerational collaboration that we've talked about earlier, it's not about young people taking over, it's more young people joining these spaces and wanting to work with adults. So it's like a collaboration. And I feel like a lot of times why like there can be like that hesitance for like young people to like have more autonomy is because sometimes adults see it as young people taking over when it's adults have a lot of insight and knowledge that young people could, use and utilize. So it's less of a young people taking over, it's more of a collaboration. And also I think it's really important for I don't know if this really answers the question, but this was a point I wanted to bring up. For adults, it's let me go back. When I first started in advocacy and supporting young people, I started in academia and I was like 15. And it was really crazy to me because I thought that academia and research was not a space for a young person. Like I had barely just finished AP Bio. I was like, what am I doing here? But I was really fortunate to have great mentors and researchers who were able to support me in that role. So I think it's really important for adults to understand that like there's no space that young people don't belong in. Like academia is a space that young people belong in. Policy is a space that young people belong in. Community engagement is a space that young people belong in. So looking within your line of work and seeing where young people you could like have more young youth involvement and trying to support and facilitate, young people just being part of those discussions and like just kind of building their autonomy.
Absolutely. That totally fit into conversation, Isabel. And I think provides a point too of creating those spaces and opening the door as an invitation is the best thing that you can do as an adult, and empowering youth to feel like I do belong here. Giving their voice validation, creating that space, like Abdullah said, to allow for mistakes. This is the first time a lot of youth are getting involved in these ways or being provided with the opportunity to have some leadership role. And so not only opening that space, letting them, really find their voice, lead, encouraging them, allowing for mistakes. Those are all really great examples of how adults can help support. I know a lot of you are putting ideas in the chat here too, and I love seeing them. That teaching resiliency, yes, is so important. Being non-judgmental, providing that safe space where youth feel comfortable asking questions and guiding questions when it's appropriate. Actively listening, reflecting with them. These are all really great. So thank you all for putting those examples in too. I'd love to hear from each of you how you can see kind of schools, community organizations, and even family systems start to contribute to building that sense of agency in youth so that they feel confident coming into these spaces.
I just want to bring up a quick point like Jonathan brought up, which is just the fact of having trust in these people because like these are extremely hardworking, dedicated, amazing people with amazing stories who want to bring amazing changes. So having trust in their abilities and having trust like they can do this is extremely essential.
I will say with schools, looking back on especially like my experience in the K through 12 system, I think what kind of helped me explore my sense of agency was like leadership opportunities in schools. So like having, of course, like student council, but really like helping facilitate student council, not just having students who are part of this club and, you know, you get to like they don't do anything but kind of helping support students as they like, you know, plan activities on campus and like just build their voice and like advocacy and sense of agency on campus. That's just really important. And it doesn't just end in your like local schools, like going up to the school board, the districts, like having youth involvement in like pretty much all areas of like education is just really important. Not like one to help make sure that the decisions you're making are a reflection of what young people want, but also again helping build those skills and like that sense of agency and autonomy. And like with community organizations, again, like just kind of having like youth involvement and like different levels of the conversation, like decision making, and just ensuring that not only are you having young people there, but you have adults who are able to like kind of just support and facilitate them effectively.
I would even say like for me, it's kind of funny. I would say like I became more involved in like community activism and just community work after just seeing after I finally learned to see the world for what it truly was. I had a lot of great mentors through I would say throughout high school who really got me engaged, you know, going to city council meetings and like really learning. And I think it's funny because it's like when you are ignorant about a topic, you know, there kind of is a comfort in that because you don't know too much about it. But now that you're finally exposed to like the reality of like the matter, you kind of wish that you never knew about it because now there's a problem that you have to that you know you can't sleep because you just want to help solve. So I'll say that that's how it was for me when I learned a lot of more about food insecurity in my community, when I learned a lot about housing discrimination that some people face. You know, Miami is like a, you know, a hotspot for a lot of immigrants to just come into. So learning a lot about like a lot of the things that immigrants struggle with and deal with. So I will say that, like I said earlier, I had an amazing mentor who I would say should like get an award for community service because like that's what she does. Like that's what she dedicated her life to, and I find it truly admirable. But she allowed me to build trust with her, and I consider her as a family member to this day. And she was the one who really got me, you know, on the floors in the grassroots work, going to these council meetings, joining these youth boards and things like that. And you know, all of those experiences really made me the person I am today, and that's the reason why I think I'm driven to do a lot of things in the community.
Absolutely. Thank you all for that. I know too, I saw some comments in the chat from different parents who talk about encouraging teens to get involved in different ways. And, you know, that's something you can do too if you're a parent listening of how can I help encourage a young person in my life, or if you're a caregiver, know other, you know, young people of how can I encourage them to maybe find some of those passions, find some of those strengths, those areas, you know, like Jonathan said, I mean, hopefully that don't keep you up all night, but that, you know, you feel that passion for. And how can you help them find spaces to get involved and try and open those doors for them in some ways? So thank you for those ideas. I know we've talked already quite a bit about mentorship in different ways. Um, but I just wanted to open it up if anyone else had any additional comments about kind of how that role of mentorship can play a role in helping develop leadership skills or confidence in the ability to create change. I know you've each shared, you know, that there are points where that mentorship helps. Just any additional thoughts there?
I'll say this real quick, and this is like on my soul. I will say like for the parents on the call and like just for the children too, like don't be afraid to not be considered as cool. Like some people may think that you're lame for going to these council meetings or for being you know, a strong advocate for mental health or whatever it is, but like don't care about what the other kids think because I believe it or not, they may not see you as a cool kid right now, but years down the road, like you'll be the coolest kid ever. I will even say too, I mean, don't be afraid, you know, closed mouths don't get fed. If you ever want more information on something, feel free to just reach out to someone who's doing something you want to do. And with these, like we've all been mentioning, you know, these different leadership opportunities, you know, going to certain meetings, joining certain clubs in these schools. These are experiences that will one prime you to be successful in the world, but they'll take you everywhere you need to be. I mean, through different conferences, through different meetings, you end up meeting close friends. And some of these friends may end up being like your, you know, your friends for life. They may be people that you may consider to be like the best man of your wedding. It's like you never know who you will meet, and you never know how significant those relationships will be.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jonathan.
For me,
Yeah, yeah, go ahead, Abdullah.
I also just want to state how like mentorship, I feel like I don't want to say it's important, I want to say that it's essential, especially for youth. Like for me as well, as I was learning, as I was growing up, it was essential for me. So like for any teacher, parent, or anybody who's in that position to be a mentor, please take it. Because you never know how much you're going to impact somebody's life in the best way possible.
Yeah, honestly, that was a great point. I love mentorship. This is something I could talk about so much. I've written so many papers on this. I've done so many readings on this for class. I think natural mentors are a lot of times the best type of mentors for young people. And I can break down essentially what natural mentors are. They're typically people who are not parents, but who already have a pre-existing role in the young person's lives that act as a mentor. So whereas, young people can join programs, school programs, community programs where they're assigned a mentor. A natural mentor is more of like maybe a coach, even an uncle or like god sibling, whatever, someone else who is already part of that child's life who kind of like takes on that natural mentorship role. And I think mentors, the biggest thing, like looking back on my experience, I always say like I wouldn't be where I'm at without my mentors, both my formal mentors and then the mentors like my natural mentors. And I think the biggest thing about that is having someone who believes in you that are not your parents. Parents are amazing, but it's like, of course my mom's always going to hype me up like I'm her child, like, so it doesn't encourage me quite. I mean, it's very encouraging, let me not, like, parents are amazing, I know parents are on this call, but it's so much like more impactful, and it really helps with like my sense of confidence when I'm being encouraged or supported by someone who they don't owe that to me, like like they're not getting any form of payment or like any form of validation for supporting me. They're truly there because they believe in me and believe in my ideas, and so that really just kind of helps young people just kind of like grow in their confidence. And then I think also, like, of course mentors can also really help us with building different skills like resilience. They can help connect us to opportunities to be involved in our communities. So I don't know, mentors are amazing, and natural mentors are even better if you can build that for young people.
Hey, Jack, is your mic on? Or am I wrong? Can you guys hear me?
I, I can hear you. I can't
Can you
hear.
hear me?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, we
Perfect.
can hear
Oh,
you.
thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you. I'm good now. All right. Great. I just was saying, great point, Isabel, of this natural mentor idea, and just such a good reminder for everyone who's on the call, thinking about maybe a youth that they support in one way that, you can increase that mentorship with or reach out to more often or start to build up that relationship, because it truly is so powerful. And we know through so many studies, and even when we're looking at ACEs and really powerful counter ACEs, is that positive adult relationship with someone in your life. It doesn't have to be a family member. It can be someone outside at school, in a club, a coach, someone of clergy, any of those spaces that really that one impact on a youth of one mentorship role can be a really powerful counter ACE to a lot of the challenges that individuals and young people are facing. So it's so powerful. I love all of your answers because mentorship is really, really powerful. Um, I have one more question for you, and then I've got some great questions from our audience lined up. And feel free to continue posting questions in the chat here, folks. But I would love to hear from each of you in your experience. What do youth most want and need from adults when it comes to their mental health? And I'm hitting you with a big one at the end.
I would probably say three things, but I think I might end up saying two things. I would say one, just a safe space to be vulnerable, to be able to express whatever you're feeling in a non-judgmental manner. And I'll also say too, sharing your own personal struggles. I mean, I'll be honest, like my parents are Haitian, and we had I have four siblings. I would say that when the three of us were first here, I kind of consider us as like the trial subjects of my mom and dad's parenting, because they're a lot more, traditional, conservative and stern. When my other two sisters came, they were a lot more lax. I would say back then, if I ever came to my mom with any mental health concern, she probably wouldn't take me that seriously. But now she probably would. So I will say that too. And I think that we forget. I know some people have been mentioning in the chat. I mean, your parents in a way are like, your first mentors. And I always try to ask my parents questions about like their early life experiences, because we're all just a mosaic of all of our experiences, whether they're good or bad. So whenever I would bring something to my parents, I would say, okay, how did you deal with this when you were a kid? Or like, what did you think about this when you were a kid? And it's very interesting to hear their answers. I think that's how I learned more about my parents too as well. But I would say that for sure.
Um, I like that point, Jonathan. I think it's really important to also share your own stories and be vulnerable with young people. There's like a saying, it's like you gotta like talk the talk or talk that
Yes. Walk the walk. Yes.
walk the walk. So it's like, if you're encouraging young people to do these things, like you also have to show them like that you're doing it as well and share that with them. I also think just letting young people know that their voice matters, like plain and simple. And that can either be through, I noticed this in the chat earlier, like motivational interviewing, like actually just sitting down with young people, hearing their voices, having panels like this, or it can be through your actions. So like compensation is a big one. And I also saw that in the chat. So I'm very much stealing your ideas, but adequately compensating young people. It shows that you value their time, you value their voice. Also like streamlining the grant making process for young people in order to ensure that youth initiatives are being able to get off the ground and like youth voices are being represented adequately. And just like, yeah, giving young people the space to be vulnerable and just supporting them through that.
These are all such amazing points. I also just want to like emphasize, even though it's been understood and we've been talking about it for some time, but like just giving them an ear, like listening to them, just like listening to them without saying anything, just like letting them just like tell you everything that's on their mind. Because sometimes that's like that helps it like by itself, that's also enough. If you just go to somebody and you just tell them whatever you're going through, but also just repeating what Jonathan said, like giving your own experiences as well. Because I know how we said how like before how like there's kind of a gap in like different experiences, but so giving your experience, telling them like how if you've ever been through a similar situation, how you've like went through that, how you solved it, and what you learned from it too, and how it helped you later on in your life. Like the difference is that the adults like they lived a much longer life than the youth. They know that like and like in the long run everything's gonna be okay. Usually whenever we go through an issue, we think that like in this moment like everything is like not in a good place right now, and like usually pessimism, which I think is one of the worst emotions ever, lurks in. But just reminding them that like in the long span of your life everything is going to be okay. This small issue, like it's going to disappear. So yeah, I'll just like telling them like everything is going to be okay. Um, giving them an ear, like listening to them, giving your own experience as well, and also just coming from a place of understanding and non-judgment, because we like as youth we are living in a different time. There are a lot of more different things going on as well. So just like learning from their perspective, like trying to be in their shoes and being non-judgmental, I think is really amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
I
Those were,
my bad. I wanted to share
yeah,
one more thing. I was
go
trying
for it,
to
Jonathan.
I would say it also came to my mind. I mean, it's really funny because I think that when we're younger, our parents are like our superheroes, and we think that they're like perfect individuals and nothing can ever go wrong. But I would say like when I first started college, first experiencing adulting, it just hit me, and it's like my parents are basically me right now, but just a little bit older. It was so funny, because it's like I finally realized they were figuring life out this whole time, and it's weird, it's like my mom always tell me, you're a lot different than when you were a kid. And I realized, because, your parents kind of seem like multiple versions of yourself. So I also use that, touching on the point of intergenerational wisdom. With anything I'm struggling with, I always like ask my mom, what did you think about, how did you think about this when you were 20? Or like, how do you think about this when you were 25? And, I just learn a lot more from them. But I think that that's how, beautiful and interesting life can be. It's like this one whole loop of, you're born, you're in a safe space, and then you have to learn to figure it out. So, and what better way to figure it out than to be mentored by people who, probably figured it out a lot more sooner than you since they're older. So that's the way I see everything.
Yeah, that's why they're there, like that's their purpose. Like honestly.
Yeah. It is, and it's such a good point, Jonathan, of, and one day it kind of hits you that they were me and I am them. And when you're younger and sometimes in like those teen years, it really does feel like no one understands me. I'm the only one going through this. They don't understand what it's like. And so I think as adults, it's also important to remember like we felt that way too. And so when engaging and providing that support, and I liked one of the comments in the chat too about like the mindfulness of making it about you, of being there to listen and let them know you're there to support them and providing that support and sharing lived experiences, but letting them know that they're validated in how they're feeling and that's okay. And I liked your point too, Jonathan, of we start to get older and ask more of these questions, but to really be the one to say, how did you feel at 20 or how did you feel at 25? Giving them the opportunity to share is really powerful too. And I love that intergenerational wisdom. Yes, it's great. Um, Thank you all. I know we have some really great questions from our audience, so I'm going to kick off a few to start. Thank you all for putting in your questions into the chat. We really appreciate it. The first question, and I'm going to try and combine a few here, is what are the best ways to bring opportunities to youth to get involved? What are some of the ways that you found out about leadership opportunities? Was it searching on your own, or are there ways that adults can start to kind of introduce different opportunities for young people?
I would say both. I would say one in the school system. If you're, well, I think that if you're in middle school, you should be focused on, being a kid, enjoying life before high school just breaks your heart. But if you're in middle school, don't worry too much about that. But in high school, you'll probably see a lot of newsletters on emails. When you sign up for different organizations, you'll see things. Some schools do a really good job of posting different flyers throughout. Maybe there's like there's this, I know in Miami, there's a thing called the Children's Trust, and they have a youth advisory committee. I think that I first learned about that through a flyer that was just posted in like a classroom. So things like that. Also, asking your teachers, they're like living networks. They may have friends who work for these organizations, and they may forward those opportunities to you as well. And also, too, I mean, social media is, it's like just the way we live now. So you'll always find opportunities that way too.
Yeah, I'm gonna hop on that last point. Social media is a great way to access young people. So if you're able to share any opportunities through that like avenue, that'd be great. Similarly to what Jonathan said, schools, of course, the K through 12 system, colleges, if you're able to share opportunities through like newsletters or through like educators, administrators on campuses, that's a great way. Connecting with youth-focused organizations or organizations that have like youth-focused like aspects. So if you're here, you're already connected with MHA. So MHA is really good about, we have something called the Expanding Impact Network. And so when people share like different youth leadership opportunities with like staff on MHA, MHA shares that with us through the Expanding Impact Network. So just connecting to other youth focused organizations and just kind of sharing that with them. Kelly Davis is the person you should be reaching out to if you do want to share any opportunities with MHA.
Yeah, so for youth, I would just say like reaching out as much as you can, being open to any opportunities, especially when it comes to your interests as well. And also I'm kind of, this is like a sub note, but just like checking your email. Like I can say for sure that like sometime like in your high school, you're gonna be getting like a lot of emails, like just like checking them and like because usually like that's like where a lot of opportunities come from for the Young Mental Health Leaders Council. That was like one of the emails that I saw and I got really interested in that opportunity. But reaching out, emphasizing what Jonathan said, like speaking with our teachers, speaking with any mentor, just like seeing what opportunities that like seeing just like seeing what opportunities that they've been through and just being open to that as well, reaching out. And for the teachers and for the adults here, I'd say like just try to advertise and advocate like so many opportunities because you never know who in your school, in your group would be interested in that. So
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you all for sharing. Another question we have, this is a great one. What suggestions do you have to encourage intrinsic motivation among youth? We have youth that we describe as being involved on a surface level, but how do we encourage them to become involved more deeply?
I will say, take some time. I mean, it's something that's very deep for like a young person to do, but take some time to yourself and do some soul searching, figuring out what you're truly passionate about. I would say for me, like professionally, I always wanted to become a doctor, but there's this thing called MD PhD where you could become a medical doctor and do science. And I had to, I really talked it through to myself and told myself, in a hypothetical situation, would you pull an all-nighter because you wanted to find a drug target to better treat a patient, or would you pull an all-nighter because you wanted to find a better way of treating a patient? And for me, it was finding a better way to treat a patient. So taking that time with yourself, figuring out what truly drives you from the inside. And I'll even say too, I mean, like with intrinsic motivation, I mean, I would say kids generally tend to be extrinsically motivated, motivated by external things. I think that, it's kind of natural because, when you're younger, you kind of rely on like, the approval of like your parents and your peers to build your confidence. But as you get older, you tend to, shift out of that mindset and start to become more motivated by things that you care about, and you start to do things that I guess make you feel fulfilled. So I would say trying to I think it's important for you to put yourself out of situations because you don't always want to be self-centered, but see how can this thing better serve my community? And that's one thing I try to do. Like, yes, this is gonna, aid me in my professional development, but how can this work that I consider meaningful help the community? So try to put others before yourself too.
Yeah, not much to add, but yeah, definitely do that. Like self-exploration. I have been one of those young people, like before I really discovered my passion, I was just doing things because my mom wanted me to do it. It looks good on my resume. I'm applying to college soon. Like I understand how it feels to like not really have something that's driving you. So finding opportunities and just like finding ways to kind of explore different like avenues, different possible careers. And this kind of goes back, and that's for young people and for adults on the call. This kind of goes back to what I mentioned earlier, which is there's no space that young people can't be part of. So for an adult, in your line of work, if you think like, young people aren't going to be interested in this, they're not going to be interested in like this like law, like, policy internship. They're not going to be interested in this like community engagement thing. Like there's just something that we're not opening up these opportunities because we don't think young people this is going to be boring to them or this is not going to be interesting to them. You'd be surprised that there are so many young people who are, trying to explore and navigate different career fields. And so opening up more like positions in your different, fields of work or, line of work, and sharing that with young people allows young people to have even more spaces to kind of explore their passion. So yeah.
Also, like, I'd say if you want to get them more motivated, or like if you're noticing like just like a lack of like, if you're noticing like a lack of like participation, or just like a lack of like motivation there, I'd say like on your end, try as much as you can to like get them excited and motivated, and also just try to make them feel welcome too. Not so that's one thing I'd say. And also for the youth, I'd say like we have this like phrase in Bridge Builders, which was finding your why, which is just finding your reason, your purpose for doing this work. Am I here just simply because I have to be, or am I here for a much more righteous purpose, which is to help those around me? So just realize that, and also just realize that purpose in your life, intertwine it as well. Like realize your passions and think and like imagine how am I going to be doing this, like, or think like realize your passions and try to do things like you're going to do for as long as you're going to live. But yeah, just like repeating my point for the adults, so just like finding ways to get them involved, like, and also yeah, just holding them accountable too.
Yeah, those are great points. Um, I think you all really nailed it with the finding something that you're passionate and interested in. That deeper motivation won't be there if it's something that you're not super into. It's like if I don't love doing this or I'm not sure why I'm doing it, I'm not going to have that deeper buy-in, that deeper motivation. And so taking that time, like Jonathan had mentioned, to encourage youth to, what really are your passions? And then Isabel, you made such a good point of introducing them to a lot of different things to figure out what that is. They might not know it, and it's hard at that age. You're trying to figure out yourself. You're being asked all of these really big questions about what you want to do with your life and your career, and you feel like you have to figure it out early before you go to college and have these decisions made. Like these pressures that we have to figure out our passions are hard too. And so sometimes it's like, yeah, sure, I think I'm into that. And you get into it, and maybe you're not. And that's okay. So providing them with that opportunity to explore. I love that, Isabel, about, what are the different options and paths we can encourage people to take, and really find those areas of interest. And I think you all made such good points there, so thank you. I know we are right at the end of our time. I want to sneak in one quick last question, because I really like this one. Someone had asked about the idea of peer mentorship, and youth advisory groups, different ways that they're involving youth. And I want to highlight, they said, how do we build trust and transparency with our youth and young people? If you each could just give one quick example of, how you felt you could really feel that trust or transparency with an adult who had an impact on you.
I'll make it quick. I would say one, and it kind of reminds me of something I said in the conference. Don't, try to be cool, like use the lingo or like try to be like the youth to get them to like you. That usually doesn't work. But I would say sharing your experiences usually works. I mean, if I'm going through something and somebody tells me what they went through, okay, now I can trust with you because I can connect with you on another level. But also too, not having extremely high expectations. And I say not having extremely high expectations because you don't want the kids to do well, but the youth are malleable. They're in that certain age in life where they're trying to find their identity. They're trying to find, who they are. And it's very counterproductive just to tell the kid, okay, you have to do this, you have to be put into this spirit, so building that safe space, but also not having too high expectations on them.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Jonathan.
I could also just say that, like, just like learn about them too. Like, how can you not trust somebody who you don't know? Know about them, be close with them, and yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm glad I'm going last because I'm gonna just summarize both of those points because they're great. Yeah, one, I think especially when you're working with young people from underrepresented communities, going out of your way to get to know them, know more about their background, their culture, and finding a way to connect with them through that. And lastly, like Jonathan mentioned, like being vulnerable, like I remember like mentors and like these older mentors that like I've just thought like they had it together and their life has been perfect and like I wish I could be like them, and like I just want to be like them so badly. And just anytime they were vulnerable with me and talked about what they experienced, whether that was when they were an adolescent, when they were older, it just helped me feel just more validated in my own struggles. It helped me feel like, okay, like life doesn't always have to be 100% okay. Like it's okay to struggle. It's okay to go through, have hard days. And it's just much more inspiring when you're hearing it from someone you look up to, and it helps you be able to like be vulnerable with them and like confide in them and have that trust in them.
Absolutely. That modeling is so important in building the relationship, the connections. Yes, Abdullah, of really getting to know them, understand them. Those are such great points. And youth can feel it. I saw a comment like this in the chat earlier, youth can feel authenticity. And when you're authentically yourself, no matter if it's cool or not, like if you're authentic, that comes off to youth as someone that they can trust and someone that they can learn from and be supported by. And so it's so important. Thank you all. I know that was a hard-hitting question to do quickly. You all did fantastic. I know we're right at the end of our time, so I want to say a huge thank you to Isabel, Jonathan, and Abdullah for being here today, for sharing your perspective, your experiences, your insights. They are so invaluable. Thank you, thank you. And I want to give an equal thank you to everyone who's been joining us here today, who's been sharing your comments, your recommendations, your resources, your questions in the chat. We appreciate you for joining us here this afternoon. Just a few reminders to close us out. This is being recorded. We'll share it all with you within the week. That link will also include your request for a certificate of attendance and all of the resources shared here today. So thank you all. You will be hearing from us soon. Thank you, panelists. It has been a pleasure to share this space with you for the last hour. We appreciate you. All right. Thank you all. We are going to be closing out. Everyone have a fantastic rest of your day.